Let's go back in time. The place, Sarajevo. The date, June 28, 1914. An open-top car is making its way through the crowded city streets. In just a few seconds, 2 shots are going to ring out. Those shots will kill the heir to the Austro-Hungarian Empire and his wife, and they'll trigger a chain reaction that will drag the entire planet into war.
But you know, in that split second of chaos, it wasn't about politics or empires. It was about a husband watching his wife die and begging her to hold on. Those were the last words of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. It's a line that just cuts right through 100 years of history, straight to the human tragedy at the center of it all.
So, the big question is how? How did this one horrific event, the murder of a royal couple, become the spark that lit the fuse for the First World War? Well, that's exactly what we're going to break down. To really get the massive impact of this assassination, we first have to understand the world it happened in. Europe in 1914 wasn't some peaceful, stable continent. It was a powder keg, just packed with tension, basically waiting for a match. You had this incredibly complex web of alliances linking all the great empires, and it created what was essentially a continent-wide tripwire. On top of that, nationalism was this powerful, growing force, especially for the South Slavic people in the Balkans. See, Austria-Hungary had just annexed Bosnia a few years before, and that just poured fuel on the fire for Serbian nationalists who were dreaming of their own independent state, free from what they saw as an oppressive empire.
Okay, so let's meet the main players in this drama. First, you've got the Archduke himself, Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the throne. Then there's his wife, Sophie. He'd actually married her for love, which was a huge deal because she wasn't royal blood. It was what they called a morganatic marriage, meaning their kids couldn't inherit the throne. You also have the ancient emperor, Franz Joseph, and Gavrilo Princip, a 19-year-old student who is about to become one of the most famous assassins in all of history.
Now, the timing of the Archduke's visit to Sarajevo was, to put it mildly, incredibly provocative. The date they chose was June 28th. To the Austro-Hungarians, it was just another day on the calendar. But for Serbs, it was Vidovdan, a hugely important national holiday, a day of remembrance for historic battle and a symbol of resistance. To hold a military parade on that day, well, it was seen as a massive insult.
So you can imagine, this deeply offensive date provided the perfect opportunity for a group of young revolutionaries who were absolutely determined to make a statement. And so, a deadly conspiracy started to form.
The team was made up of 6 young men, all part of a revolutionary group called Young Bosnia. And their age is a really key part of this whole story. They were young, they were passionate, and they truly believed that assassinating a symbol of the empire was the ultimate act of heroism for their people.
But these guys weren't acting alone. Oh no, they were armed and trained by a very shadowy organization called the Black Hand. This was a secret society deep within the Serbian military. Their big goal was to create a greater Serbia, and they were convinced that violence was the only way to get it done.
Okay, let's get to the day itself, June 28th. Now, what happened next was not some slick, perfectly executed plan. It was an absolute mess. A series of chaotic screw-ups, failures, and one fateful random moment of chance that ended up changing the world forever.
So, as the Archduke's motorcade is driving along the river, the first assassin, a guy named Nedjeljko Čabrnjević, makes his move. He throws a bomb, but he misses. It actually bounces right off the Archduke's car, rolls under the vehicle behind it, and explodes, injuring around 20 people. At this point, the plot was a total failure.
After the bombing, the Archduke gets to the town hall, and he is furious. His security team is scrambling, trying to figure out what to do next. When someone warns them that it's way too dangerous to continue, the governor, Oskar Podiorik, just arrogantly dismisses the idea with this now infamous quote: "It was a truly fatal miscalculation."
And this timeline really shows you just how quickly everything went completely off the rails. So after the town hall meeting, the Archduke insists, he absolutely insists, on going to the hospital to visit the officers who were wounded in the bombing. The plan was changed. But, and this is crucial, not everybody got the memo.
And this right here, this is the cascade of errors. It's almost comical if it weren't so tragic. The governor, Podiorik, decides on a new, safer route, but he completely forgets to tell the driver. So the driver, just following the original route, makes the planned turn. Podiorik screams at him to stop. The driver slams on the brakes, the car stalls out as he tries to reverse, and it stops. dead, just a few feet away from a totally defeated Gavrilo Princip who probably couldn't believe his luck. Princip fired 2 shots. The Archduke and his wife were killed. The assassination was over, but the crisis it was about to create, the July crisis, was just getting started. And one by one, the political dominoes of Europe began to fall.
Austria-Hungary was absolutely determined to punish Serbia. They went straight to their powerful ally Germany and secured a promise of unconditional support. It became known as the infamous blank check. With that guarantee in their back pocket, they issued an ultimatum to Serbia, a list of demands so ridiculous and harsh that it was practically designed to be rejected.
And this really gets to the core of it. Austria-Hungary demanded all sorts of things, like shutting down any anti-Austrian groups, but the real sticking point was the demand to allow their own officials to come into Serbia and basically take over the investigation. Serbia actually agreed to almost everything, but they just couldn't accept that last point. It was a complete violation of their sovereignty as a nation.
And that rejection was all the excuse Austria-Hungary needed. On July 28th, exactly 1 month to the day after the assassination, they declared war. And that was the tripwire. Russia, which saw itself as the great protector of the Slavic peoples, started mobilizing its enormous army to back up Serbia. Germany, seeing Russia mobilizing, saw it as a threat and declared war on them. That, of course, pulled in Russia's ally, France. And then, when Germany invaded neutral Belgium to attack France, Britain had no choice but to enter the war. The powder keg had officially exploded.
The war that came next would last for 4 brutal, horrifying years and would consume the entire globe. The final cost of that one wrong turn in Sarajevo, made a million times worse by a month of diplomatic failure, was more than 16 million lives. It's wild to think that today, the actual artifacts from that day are just sitting there, silently, in a museum in Vienna. On the left, you can see Gavrilo Princip's pistol, and on the right, the Archduke's blood-stained uniform. They're just these tangible, chilling relics of a single moment that completely tore the world apart.
Look, it is absolutely vital to understand this one thing. The assassination didn't cause World War I all by itself. All those other things, the tangled alliances, the imperial ambitions, the simmering nationalism, that was the gasoline that had been filling the room for decades. The 2 shots fired by Gavrilo Princip, they were simply the spark. And that leaves us with this one kind of haunting question. We think of history as being shaped by these huge, massive forces, but it's also moved by these small, random, accidental moments. We can never know for sure, of course, but it's really worth asking. What if that car had never stalled? What if the driver had just kept going?